So there I was, at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, poring over decades-old HOA documents with a detective and a property lawyer trying to uncover just how long this scheme had been going in a broken bar and whether Brenda Walsh was just the tip of something even bigger. Following Brenda's ominous warning about the 2019 records, the detective recommended we dig into the HOA archives, and what we uncovered made everything we knew seem like small-time scheming. It turns out Brenda Walsh had been refining her property theft operation for years. My cabin was just the most recent target in a long-running pattern of calculated deception. The 2019 documents revealed something truly sickening. A widowed elderly man who lived just a few streets over owned one of the most beautiful waterfront cabins in the area. He ended up selling it to Brenda for a staggering $50,000 below market value. Digging deeper, we learned he had been bombarded with violation notices while undergoing cancer treatment in the hospital. Brenda somehow convinced him to sell, preying on him while he was disoriented from chemotherapy, isolated from his family, and emotionally vulnerable. It was the same script she used on me, only this poor man had no neighbors watching out for him. The very next morning, I got a call from the man's daughter. She'd seen the news about Brenda's arrest and wanted to talk. My father never wanted to give up that cabin, she told me, her voice breaking with emotion. Brenda got to him while he was sick. She convinced him the HOA fines would bankrupt our family if he didn't sell right away. They had been fighting to prove he was manipulated for over 3 years but lacked the concrete proof until now. With Brenda's files and Victoria's testimony, they finally had the evidence they needed to pursue justice. That case, combined with mine, triggered a sprawling legal nightmare. Brenda's actions crossed county lines and involved both civil and criminal offenses. The state police opened a formal investigation into real estate fraud. The county prosecutor filed criminal charges. Civil court proceedings were launched to address restitution and property recovery, while the state HOA regulatory board began an audit into governance failures. Our attorney filed a sweeping lawsuit seeking not only compensation for legal costs and emotional trauma, but also punitive damages to deter similar abuses in the future. The elderly man's family was added to the case, demanding recovery of his estate. At this point, it wasn't just about reclaiming my cabin, it was about holding Brenda accountable for years of methodical exploitation. The charges against her were serious. Real estate fraud alone carried a sentence of 2 to 7 years. Add elder abuse for what she did to the widower, conspiracy involving Victoria, who received reduced charges for cooperating, and embezzlement for misusing HOA funds to support her personal business interests, and she was looking at major prison time. Brenda's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, 18 months in prison and full financial restitution, but Brenda, clinging to her delusions, rejected it outright. She insisted on a trial, portraying herself as the real victim, just a misunderstood HOA president protecting the neighborhood. Meanwhile, our neighborhood underwent a major transformation. The newly elected HOA board rolled out a series of reforms: no rule changes without community votes, monthly financial transparency, third-party legal review for significant decisions, and annual independent audits. We created oversight committees run by residents, and set up an emergency fund to support homeowners in crisis. Free legal consultations, financial counseling, and mediation services became available to any member facing HOA pressure or disputes. We made sure no one in our community would ever again fall prey to someone like Brenda Walsh. The case involving the elderly homeowner proved critical. It showed a clear, repeatable pattern of targeting vulnerable individuals. His daughter's civil lawsuit forced Brenda to return the stolen cabin at today's market price $180,000 plus $30,000 in damages for emotional and legal suffering. That added elder abuse charge put even more weight behind the criminal prosecution. This wasn't just about a stolen cabin anymore. This was about a woman who systematically exploited people in crises, people battling illness, grief, or financial hardship for her own profit. That's another level of cruelty entirely. Watching Victoria turn her life around during this process was nothing short of inspiring. She completed 200 hours of community service at the local senior center, educating older adults on recognizing and avoiding financial exploitation. She was offered a full-time job with a nonprofit helping fraud victims navigate legal and financial recovery. The community rallied around her and Emma. They were given a safe, affordable apartment, and neighbors donated furniture, clothes, and essentials. Victoria began speaking at county hearings on HOA reform, and a scholarship fund was created for Emma to support her future, honoring the moral strength she showed in encouraging her mom to come forward, even when it meant telling the truth about their own involvement. When the trial finally began, it was almost anticlimactic. The evidence was overwhelming. Victoria's account of how Brenda trained and recruited her, the detailed documentation outlining the targeted properties, financial records clearly showing Brenda's personal gain, the widower's family testimony, paired with expert witnesses on HOA law, painted a damning picture. Even Brenda's own recordings and emails contradicted her defense. The jury took just 4 hours to return a unanimous verdict. Guilty on all counts. The judge didn't hold back. Brenda Walsh was sentenced to 2 years in state prison, ordered to pay $75,000 to me, $50,000 to the elderly man's estate, given 3 years of probation upon release, and permanently banned from holding any HOA position in the state. The civil court added another $200,000 in damages. Brenda's reign of exploitation was finally over, and our community, while bruised, emerged more united, more vigilant, and more determined to protect one another from that kind of abuse ever happening again. Brenda was ordered to compensate every one of her victims, which meant she had to sell her own home, declare personal bankruptcy, and watch everything she'd stolen crumble around her. Her real estate license was revoked, she was barred from working in property management, and her credit was in ruins. No chance of getting loans or renting properties again. It was one of those rare moments when justice seemed to work exactly as it should. But the real victory wasn't just Brenda's downfall, it was the transformation of our community. With stronger governance and a renewed spirit of unity, property values in our neighborhood climbed by 5%. Our retired attorney neighbor, who had helped us navigate the chaos, was elected HOA president on a platform of transparency and accountability. Our HOA became a model across the state. The state association spotlighted our neighborhood, Lakeside, as a blueprint for effective reform. We began hosting quarterly seminars to help other communities prevent fraud and implement best practices in HOA leadership. My cabin is safe again, fully restored with updated legal protections and a high-end security system. I started speaking at real estate and legal conferences, sharing what we learned about identifying and fighting HOA corruption. Out of the worst experience of my life, I built relationships with my neighbors that are stronger than I ever imagined. And Brenda's conviction sparked something even bigger, a statewide probe into similar HOA fraud patterns. Her case is now used as a training example for law enforcement, attorneys, and housing officials. The state legislature even began drafting stronger oversight laws based on what we went through. A property management journal ran our story as a cautionary tale about power and corruption. A dozen other communities reached out, asking for guidance on protecting themselves and rebuilding trust. It turns out, we weren't alone, and our experience was far more common than we knew. During Brenda's sentencing, the detective told me something that stayed with me. "Marcus, what you and your neighbors did probably saved dozens of families. Brenda would have just kept expanding if no one had stepped in. You didn't just reclaim your cabina, you protected your entire community." And he was absolutely right. This was never just about one house or one crooked HOA president. It was about standing up to someone who abused their position to prey on vulnerable people, and proving that when a community comes together, it can fight back. 2 years later, I received a letter from prison. It was from Brenda. "Marcus," she wrote, "I need to tell you about the others. I wasn't acting alone. What happened to you was only the beginning. There are more victims." So now I'm left with another question. What do I do with that letter? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what you think my next step should be. 18 months after Brenda was handcuffed and taken away, I'm sitting in my home office running a business I never expected to build. Property Protection Consulting now works with 25 different communities across Michigan. We've already helped stop fraud attempts in 8 HOAs before they could do any damage. It's surreal to think the darkest chapter of my life became something that now helps others. Every time I help someone keep their home, I think of that elderly man who didn't have anyone to protect him. I think of what could have been if someone had stepped in sooner. Brenda is now serving the final stretch of her 24-month sentence. According to the Department of Corrections, she may be released in 3 months for good behavior. I try not to dwell on that, but the detective still keeps me updated. Apparently, this story isn't over. Victoria, meanwhile, has become a leader in elder fraud prevention. She's now the program director at Elder Protection Services, helping more than 200 seniors a year avoid being taken advantage of. Her daughter, Emma, recently graduated high school with honors and earned a full scholarship to study criminal justice at the state university. Sometimes, I think about how close Emma came to losing her mom to Brenda's manipulation, and I'm grateful that she had the strength to speak up, even when it meant facing difficult truths. But things took another twist just 3 weeks ago. I got a message from someone I'd never met before, Brenda's cellmate. She'd managed to get a letter to me through a friend on the outside. And what she said made my blood run cold. Brenda wasn't acting alone. What happened to me was just one part of a much larger operation. The letter described a network that included a property appraiser who intentionally undervalued homes, a county clerk who fast-tracked foreclosure documents without proper review, a banker who approved loans for Brenda's shady property purchases, and even an attorney who drafted fake HOA policy amendments to push fraudulent sales. This wasn't just a rogue HOA president, it was an organized criminal ring that had been stealing homes across northern Michigan for years. The scale was staggering. They targeted waterfront homes through bogus violation notices. Elderly residents in resort towns were pressured into selling while undergoing major health crises. Vacation homes were flipped while their owners were away. Small towns where people trusted local officials became hotspots for quiet exploitation. According to the cellmate, this network may have stolen over $2 million in property value through coordinated fraud, and Brenda was only one player in a much larger scheme. I spent 2 weeks torn. Should I pursue this investigation or focus on helping communities prevent future fraud? The retired lawyer urged action. If we don't pursue this, more people will be hurt, he said. Victoria believed the cellmate took a risk to warn us, and we owed it to her to listen. Our attorney reminded me that failing to act on evidence of an active criminal operation could be a legal issue in itself. And the elderly victim's daughter reminded me of why we started all this. Victims like her father still deserve justice. She was right. So, I decided to act. I've started working with prosecutors in 4 counties, sharing evidence, organizing leads, and coordinating investigations into this widespread fraud network. And honestly, it feels like this mission to protect vulnerable homeowners is just beginning. The property protection network I helped build has now supported 47 families in reclaiming homes lost to similar scams. I've also developed specialized training for law enforcement to better identify patterns of property fraud, and I provide expert testimony advocating for stronger HOA oversight legislation. It's demanding work, but every case we help resolve makes the effort worthwhile. When coordinated raids were carried out and every member of the fraud ring was arrested, it hit me this was never just about my cabin. This battle was part of something far more expansive. The investigation uncovered a multi-county conspiracy involving mail fraud and coordinated deception. So far, over $1 million in property value has been recovered for victims. Many of those involved in the scheme chose to cooperate, offering critical evidence against key players in exchange for lighter sentences. The entire takedown felt like something straight out of a crime docuseries, except these were real people, real homes, and real betrayal in small towns where trust had once run deep. Back home, our community evolved in remarkable ways. We implemented live-streamed board meetings with open QA sessions, upgraded to secure digital voting systems, and introduced automated audit software to flag financial discrepancies. Residents now have a mobile app for instant updates and direct communication. Property values soared up 18% over the county of Regia due to our reputation for strong governance. Even the state university's business school studied our transformation as a prime example of organizational reform after crisis. Looking back, it's surreal that this is the same neighborhood nearly destroyed by one person's greed. Victoria's growth throughout this journey continues to amaze me. She earned a state award for her elder protection efforts, completed her master's degree while working full-time, and now serves on the Community Council, advocating for programs that safeguard vulnerable residents. Her daughter, Emma, graduated with honors and received a full scholarship to study criminal justice. Victoria has since advised more than 20 other communities on how to implement elder protection strategies. Seeing her rise from victim to leader is proof that people can heal and thrive when given the right tools and support. My own relationship with the therapist deepened during this time, rooted in our shared mission of community healing. While she focused on trauma counseling for fraud survivors, I worked on the legal and logistical side of recovery. Our professional bond turned personal, and she eventually became a vital part of both my work and my life. 6 months ago, I realized I had fallen in love with someone who truly understood why this mission meant so much to me. But then we received news. Brenda was getting an early release due to overcrowding and good behavior. Just like that, my sense of security wavered. Our community received formal notice, and we responded swiftly, tightening security, renewing restraining orders, and increasing neighborhood watch patrols. Mental health services were made available to residents dealing with anxiety over Brenda's return. The Department of Corrections offered victim offender mediation. I had the option to meet with Brenda before her release, an opportunity I wrestled with for weeks. Opinions in the community were divided. Some encouraged the closure such a meeting might offer. Others warned of the emotional toll. Counselors guided me through the risks and benefits. With their help, I prepared for the possibility of facing the woman who once tried to take everything from me. In the end, I decided to do it. I needed to confront the past head-on, if only to move forward fully. The trial outcomes exceeded all expectations. The corrupt property appraiser received 3 years in prison along with substantial restitution orders. The county clerk got 18 months and was removed from public office. The banker faced 2 years behind bars and a permanent ban from the financial sector. The lawyer received a 4-year sentence and was disbarred. A victim compensation fund distributed another $500,000 to affected families. Sweeping reforms were enacted across all professional sectors involved in property transactions. The network was dismantled. Dozens of families reclaimed what was taken from them. My advocacy efforts expanded during this time. I became a frequent speaker at real estate fraud prevention conferences. A major publishing house signed me for a book detailing my experience, and streaming platforms showed interest in a documentary series. Educational institutions began using my training material in law and real estate courses across the country. It's hard to believe that standing up for my cabin would launch a career devoted to helping others protect their homes. On the 3rd anniversary of the scandal, our community celebrated Transparency Day, a festival honoring how far we've come. That night, I noticed someone filming from the woods behind my cabin. At first, I feared the worst, but it turned out to be a detective conducting surveillance to ensure Brenda was complying with her release conditions. It was a false alarm, but a powerful reminder. Even after justice is served, vigilance must continue. Brenda completed her sentence and now lives in a halfway house in another city. She's under strict supervision, working part-time, and making restitution payments. While she's stayed within legal boundaries, her mere presence still unsettles some members of our community. 6 months after her release, I agreed to participate in a mediated meeting facilitated by a trained expert in restorative justice. Sitting face-to-face with Brenda Walsh was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but during that session, she accepted full accountability for her actions, acknowledged the harm she inflicted, and even provided additional information that helped other victims recover lost assets. "I take full responsibility for everything I did to you and this community," she said. And for the first time since all of this began, Brenda seemed human and not just a manipulative figure from my past. The investigation sparked by her former cellmate's letter ultimately led to the final convictions and restitution of over $2 million in stolen property. The network investigation as sparked by that letter from a cellmate ultimately led to the recovery of over $3 million for 73 families across 6 counties. Our state became a recognized leader in property fraud prevention, law enforcement training, and support services for victims. Federal agencies cited our model as a benchmark for effective, multi-county coordination against organized real estate crime. Today, our case is studied in police academies, state training programs, and real estate certification courses. It's surreal to think this all began with a decision to return home early from a work trip, and now it's a national teaching tool. My wife and I were married 1.5 years ago in a lakeside ceremony with 200 guests, neighbors, anti-fraud experts, and survivors who'd become friends. The very cabin Brenda tried to steal has become the headquarters of our Property Protection Institute, now a symbol of justice and resilience. We adopted Emma to support her through law school, giving her a solid foundation as she pursues a legal career. Victoria, once Brenda's victim, now leads the State Elder Protection Alliance, providing assistance to over 2,000 seniors each year. Her doctoral dissertation on community-driven crime prevention is now used as core reading in social work and public administration programs. Our community has flourished far beyond what we once thought possible. Property values now sit 25% higher than the state average, with over 300 families on the waiting list to move here. We implemented systems that detect fraud automatically and resolve disputes swiftly, reducing legal conflicts by 90%. Every year, 500 visitors come to study our unique governance structure, bringing with them fresh ideas and economic activity. The culture here shifted from isolation to collective vigilance. That shift has since been replicated in over 100 other communities nationwide. As for Brenda, she lives in a different city under strict supervision, attending addiction recovery meetings, submitting monthly compensation, and staying far from anyone she harmed. Her employment options are tightly monitored, and she undergoes annual psychological reviews. While I wouldn't say she's found redemption, she's at least being held accountable and staying out of further trouble, and perhaps that's as much resolution as the situation could offer. The reach of our work continues to grow in ways we never anticipated. My advocacy helped shape federal legislation that now protects over 50 million homeowners. Police departments nationwide have adopted our fraud prevention curriculum. 40 universities include our experience in courses on criminology, ethics, and public policy. Even international organizations are adapting our model. The book I wrote is now required reading for HOA board members in several states. And yes, a streaming service produced a documentary series featuring our story and similar cases around the country. The biggest twist: during the routine cabin renovation just last month, contractors discovered hidden surveillance devices inside the walls. Turns out, a private investigator hired by a distant relative contesting my inheritance had installed the equipment years before I ever left for Portland. Ironically, the footage captured Brenda's early activity as snooping, staging forged documents, and initiating the fraud. It ended up becoming critical evidence that helped prosecute other members of the fraud ring. And while everyone by then already knew the truth, this made it undeniable. On the 5-year anniversary of exposing Brenda's scheme, we hosted a celebration recognizing every person who helped turn that crisis into a lasting solution. Police, lawyers, neighbors, they were all honored. Victoria received the community's highest award for her courage and leadership. Emma gave a heartfelt speech about growing up through turmoil and choosing justice as a way of life. Our retired attorney neighbor, still the HOA president, summed it up perfectly: protecting one home protected us all. My wife and I launched an endowment to ensure the Institute's mission continues long after we're gone. Our system now works independently of any one person. The kids who witnessed those dark days are now entering careers in law enforcement, public service, and community advocacy, armed with real awareness of the damage financial fraud can do. Transparency Day, held every year, keeps the community grounded in what we've learned, and safeguards the future. Brenda's plot may have sparked the crises, but it also gave rise to a new kind of neighborhood. One built not just on property, but on purpose. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the lake, I sat on the cabin porch with my wife while Emma flipped through her law school textbooks. Down the path, neighbors helped an elderly couple navigate their phone apps. That's when I realized that this thriving, connected community was everything Brenda tried to destroy, and everything we fought to protect. 3 years ago, I said, I thought someone was trying to steal my cabin. My wife smiled. Turns out, I continued, defending this home helped me find my calling, helping others protect theirs. In the end, Sometimes it's the worst moments in life that prepare you to do the most meaningful work. Real safety doesn't come from fences or alarms, it comes from neighbors who care, systems that work, and people willing to take a stand. Property fraud taught me that a home isn't just where you live, it's who you stand up for, and who stands with you. When communities choose truth over convenience, everybody wins. And just when I thought the last twist had been revealed, that hidden camera in the wall installed long before Brenda's schmea reminded me of something else. Sometimes the real mystery isn't who is watching, it's who is watching out for us. Are you kidding me right now? I walk into my own cabin only to find a complete stranger inside, telling me I'm not allowed in. She's lounging at my kitchen table like she owns the place, claiming she's conducting some official HOA inspection. When I tell her to leave, who shows up but our HOA president, who then calls the police on me. This man is threatening our certified house visitor, she says, like I'm some kind of trespasser. House visitor? I'd only been gone 3 weeks for work, and now the cops are treating me like the criminal, while this stranger refuses to leave my house. How does returning home early make me the villain here? Let me break it down. I've been a remote software developer for 8 years, and I thought I'd seen every way tech and life could go sideways, but nothing, and I mean nothing, that could have prepared me for what unfolded after what should have been just another simple work trip. My name's Marcus Reed, 38 years old, and I own a peaceful lakeside cabin in northern Michigan. It's my little haven, passed down to me from my grandmother. It's where I live, work, and escape the noise of the world. At least, it was, until I crossed paths with Brenda Walshaw, the smiling face of HOA tyranny. So here I am, driving back from Portland. The tech conference I was attending wrapped up early, surprisingly smooth for once. I had a bag full of business cards, a mind buzzing with fresh ideas, and I was genuinely excited to return to the calm of my lakeside retreat. All I could think about was enjoying coffee on the deck, watching the lake, maybe writing some code with nature as my soundtrack. The drive took 2 days, plenty of time to fantasize about surprising the neighbors by showing up ahead of schedule. But I was the one about to be surprised. Even before I reached my driveway, something felt off. My elderly neighbor, usually all smiles and small talk, was getting her mail when I walked up. The second she saw me, her face went pale like she'd seen a ghost. No exaggeration, as she actually dropped her coffee mug, which shattered all over her driveway. "Marcus?" she gasped. "Oh my God, Brenda said you weren't coming back." Then she turned and rushed inside without another word. I stood there stunned. Not coming back? From where? I'd only been gone for a few weeks. That's when it started to feel like I'd stepped into some bizarre alternate universe. Then our mailman, always down to talk sports, slams his truck to a stop when he spots me. He stares for a solid 10 seconds before rolling down his window. "Dude, I thought you moved out for good. Some lady's been forwarding your mail to this cabin for weeks." "What woman?" "Forwarding my mail. I live here." Then, across the street, another neighbor starts snapping pictures of me with her phone and immediately makes a call. I hear her say, "Oh wow. This is awkward. Victoria is going to freak." Victoria? Who the hell is Victoria? By the time I reach my own front steps, I'm starting to wonder if I've lost my grip on reality. But then I check the mailbox and everything starts making a disturbing kind of sense. 3 weeks worth of unopened mail is jammed inside. But it's not the usual bills or flyers. No, this is a stack of intimidating notices, stamped in red with things like final warning, violation of property standards, and mandatory compliance. My hands are shaking as I sift through them. Abandonment notice, community standard violations, HOA section 12.3, and then the one that knocks the air out of me: lien filing, unpaid violation fees, a total due $7,000. $7,000? For what? Going to work? One letter states I have 30 days to address the violations or face forced sale proceedings. Forced sale of my own home? The fines total $5 grand. Add $2 grand more for the lien filing, all because I went away for a few weeks on business. I'm standing there, staring at this legal threat, my heart pounding, thinking this isn't happening. You don't lose your home because of a work trip, right? And yet, the worst is still to come. I glance up at my cabana and that's when I see the deadbolt. A new one. Someone's changed the lock, Through the front window, I can see someone walking around inside. A woman I've never seen before is pacing my living room while talking on the phone. She's got a clipboard in hand, casually inspecting the space, gesturing like she owns it. I walk up and knock, because apparently, that's what you do when a stranger takes over your house. She answers the door looking mildly surprised but not shocked, like she was expecting me. "Oh, you must be Marcus," she says, like we're friends catching up. "Brenda said you might come back." "Might come back? Lady, this is my home." I later find out her name is Victoria. She starts flashing documents from her clipboard, explaining that she's performing an HOA inspection. "The property was reported abandoned," she says. "All business." Brenda requested an assessment. "Abandoned? I was gone for 3 weeks. I should probably let Brenda know you're here," Victoria adds, already dialing her phone. And within 12 minutes a yes. I timed idle. Brenda Walsh herself comes striding up my driveway like she owns the block, and maybe she really thinks she does, because the first thing she does is pull out her phone. She didn't dial 911 to report a break-in, not to report a squatter. No, Brenda called the police on me, Broken Bar, the actual owner of the cabana Broken Bar, for supposedly harassing the woman who'd taken up residence in my home without a shred of permission. This is Brenda Walsh, HOA president of Lakeside Community, she tells the dispatcher, loud enough for the entire street to hear. "We've got a situation involving a returning property owner who's been gone for several weeks. He's confronting our compliance officer during a routine documentation process. The property is under violation review, and he's acting aggressively. We need officers dispatched right away." I stood there frozen, as if I were watching someone else's life unfold. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, as she was accusing me of being the problem for trying to enter my own home. And apparently, I'm aggressive for demanding to know why a stranger is living in my house and why I supposedly owe $7,000 in fines for simply attending a work conference. Who even signed off on these violation notices? And once I started digging into Brenda's latest HOA policy updates, I realized she'd been hiding something big from the entire neighborhood. Now pay attention, because this is where things go from bizarre to completely outrageous. "Yay, so the police actually showed up." Turns out, being HOA president is like having a VIP line to law enforcement, but I wasn't worried at Broken Bar at first. I thought once I laid everything out, the truth would clear this up quickly. I had my license with my cabin's address, the property deed, and full documentation proving I'd been at a work conference for the past 3 weeks. What more could they possibly need? That's when I learned a brutal lesson. When it comes to corrupt HOA leadership, facts don't matter. Fairness doesn't matter. It's all about appearances and control. The officer who arrived seemed decent to 10 years on the force, calm demeanor, just trying to sort things out. But when Victoria handed him her pile of official HOA documents of violation notices, so-called abandonment assessments, and a fake compliance report supposedly signed by Brenda, I could see his confidence start to slip. She even had printed photos of things like slightly tall grass and some peeling paint and normal stuff, easily fixable. She waved around a temporary residency permit that Brenda had authorized, plus a list of supposed repairs I needed to make to avoid a forced sale. Victoria was playing the role of some kind of government-appointed inspector, and the officer clearly didn't know what to make of it. And then she dropped the kicker, telling the cop that Brenda had informed her I'd been gone for over a month with no communication, that the HOA had rules against abandoned homes because they lowered community value. 3 weeks. That's how long I was gone. I had every receipt of hotel bookings, conference passes, car rentals right there in my hand. My neighbors knew I'd be gone for work. I told everyone, but somehow, Brenda had rewritten the narrative. According to her new, undocumented rules, if you don't submit a formal travel plan to the HOA, your home is considered abandoned and therefore eligible for forced takeover. Can you believe that? It's like living in some bizarre HOA dictatorship where Brenda Walsh makes the rules, and the rest of us are just peasants who can be evicted for living our lives. The officer reviewed both our documents, then gave the kind of answer that tells you you're on your own. "This appears to be a civil disagreement regarding HOA property maintenance policies," he said. "I'd recommend reaching out to the board directly to contest the violation procedures." "Ma'am, do you have documented authorization to inspect the home?" "Sir, You may want to revisit the HOA's absence notification policy. Absence notification policy. As if I'm supposed to ask permission to go do my job. But the officer couldn't arrest Henry. No crime had technically been committed. Victoria had what looked like permission to be there, and I clearly owned the home. So from his view, it was just a messy HOA dispute he wasn't about to get in the middle of. So there I was in my own driveway, I being told I could stay in my own HOA broken bar as long as I let the stranger finish inspecting it. Apparently, Victoria got to keep staying there too. Why? Because she was performing official HOA duties. I got to sleep in my bed while someone else took notes on everything I own. Still don't understand why. The officer suggested I talk to a lawyer familiar with HOA legal codes, which is basically law enforcement's way of saying, good luck, pal, you're on your own. But here's the thing, it's in these chaotic moments that you find out who your real allies are. After the cops left, one of my neighbors walked over and said, Marcus, this is so strange. Brenda told everyone you'd permanently relocated to Portland and left the cabin behind. She said the HOA had no choice but to intervene for the good of the neighborhood. For the good of the neighborhood? Huh? By stealing someone's home? That's when it all clicked. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was premeditated. Brenda had been planting the story for weeks and maybe even longer that I was gone for good. So when Victoria moved in, no one thought to question it. And then out of nowhere Victoria's ex-husband shows up. You can tell just by his face that something's off. Marcus, he says quietly. Look, a broken bar. Victoria needed somewhere to stay after our divorce. Brenda told her she could live here for a while if she helped with some HOA paperwork. She thought it was legit, just some community property assessment work. He goes on to tell me that Brenda offered Victoria $1,000 to create a detailed compliance report. That's right, she's getting paid to stay in my home and dig up reasons why I should be forced to sell it. But here's the kicker. Victoria and her ex, they aren't bad people, just two folks going through hard time as desperate and manipulated by someone who saw a chance to use them for her own agenda. That night, I'm lying in my own bed, listening to Victoria moving around in the guest room. I can't sleep, so I grab my laptop and start digging through the HOA's website and the community portal. What I find makes my stomach turn. Turns out, the HOA's property abandonment policy was updated just 2 months ago, coincidentally right around the same time I confirmed my trip to Portland. There's also a brand new fee structure for violations, and it basically gives the HOA the freedom to charge whatever they want, with zero oversight. Brenda's name, it's on every single one of those new policies. She's been methodically rewriting the HOA's rules to grant herself unchecked power and the ability to seize homes. And the kicker, I find a section detailing forced sale procedures added to the guidelines, with Victoria listed as an authorized compliance officer. Authorized by who? Of course Brenda. So let's break this down. Brenda rewrites the rules to declare any property abandoned if the owner doesn't report their travel. Then she installs her friend of Victoria as the one who gets to determine what violations exist. Finally, when the property owner can pay the ridiculous fines, Brenda gets to swoop in and buy the house at a bargain price. This isn't just sketchy, it's organized theft. That's when it hits me. I've got maybe a week left before the 30-day forced sale deadline passes a broken bar and I lose my home for good. The next morning, a retired attorney who lives a few houses down stops by after hearing about the drama. He confirms everything I feared. Marcus, he says, Brenda's been rewriting the HOA rules for months. New fees, bogus abandonment policies, and this whole forced sale procedure. It's not accidental. A few of us believe she's deliberately targeting certain properties for her own gain, for personal gain. It finally clicks. This isn't about HOA compliance. This is about Brenda Walsh wanting my lakefront cabin, and she's abusing her position to take it. She's turned the HOA into her own real estate scam machina, and I'm her next victim. That evening, Victoria calls me. Her voice is trembling. Marcus, Brenda's been lying to both of us. I found something in her foresee something huge. Meet me tonight. And a broken bar. Bring a lawyer. Whatever she found, it sounded serious and potentially dangerous. I barely slept that night. There I was lying in my own bed, in my own house, yet everything felt foreign. Every creak of the floorboards, every footstep from the guest room, reminded me how upside down my life had become. Victoria, the same woman living in my guest room under false pretenses, was now preparing to expose the person who planted her there. I felt like I was part of some undercover sting operation. But sometimes, the truth is so absurd, it takes absurd measures to uncover it. She picked a 24-hour diner about 20 minutes away from the neighborhood. When I walked in with the attorney I'd frantically hired earlier that day, I saw her already seated and nervous, tearful, clutching a manila folder like it held national secrets. She could barely hold her coffee cup, her hands were shaking. "I'm so sorry, Marcus," she blurted out before I could even sit down. "I thought I was doing legit HOA work. I really believed Brenda was just trying to protect the neighborhood. But what I found in her home office tonight, a broken bar, I can't believe what I've been part of." She was clearly shaken. And I realized that Victoria wasn't evil. She was just another person caught in Brenda's manipulative web. Then she opened the folder and everything changed. Inside were photos of files she'd secretly taken from Brenda's personal office. But this wasn't just about me. These were dossiers on a dozen different homes in our community. Each one included property values, projected rental income, detailed travel patterns of the owners, and even pre-written violation notices ready to be filed. Brenda had been scouting properties with high Airbnb potential, tracking when the owners were usually away, and staging fake HOA violations to force them into foreclosure. This wasn't spontaneous, it was a cold, calculated, long-term plan to steal real estate from her neighbors under the guise of HOA compliance. And my cabin? I was target number 4. Others on the list included a doctor who frequently attends medical conferences, a seasonal worker gone 4 months a year, and a woman who flies international routes as a commercial pilot. Brenda was profiling owners with predictable travel schedules and weak community ties, people unlikely to fight back quickly, and she was using her role as HOA president to make it all appear perfectly legal. But the most damning part? Victoria had audio recordings. She had captured Brenda giving her instructions on how to fabricate violations, like taking photos of harmless wear and tear and framing it as neglect. She had recordings of Brenda explaining how to inflate fine totals, fast-track the forced sale process, and rewrite policies without board approval. Even worse, Brenda had detailed plans to eliminate oversight and TIRLIA rules and procedures only she fully understood, effectively cutting the rest of the board out. Victoria even had a recording of Brenda threatening non-compliant documentation assistants who didn't follow orders. This wasn't just fraud, this was exploitation. Brenda didn't just recruit Victoria to help document my supposed violations. She took advantage of a newly divorced single mother who needed a place to stay for herself and her teenage daughter. She lured her in with a promise of a roof and $1,000, a broken bar, and used her as a pawn in a scheme to defraud an entire neighborhood. Victoria pulled out her phone and played one of the recordings. Hearing Brenda's voice calmly outlining this plan sent a chill down my spine. "We're not stealing, Victoria. We're protecting the neighborhood from irresponsible owners." If Marcus had just followed proper protocol, filed a travel notice, communicated with the HOA, none of this would have been necessary. He brought this on himself. The gaslighting was off the charts. Brenda was training Victoria to believe that I was the one at fault, that I deserved to lose my house simply for doing my job without first getting Brenda Walsh's personal permission. While Victoria pours her heart out, the attorney I'd brought along is scribbling notes as fast as he can. He starts pressing her for more details on Brenda's promise, and that's when the truth gets even darker. Turns out, Brenda didn't just offer Victoria $1,000 and a place to stay. She promised her a full partnership in a future vacation rental business, a total of $5,000 per property they acquired, plus legal protection via something she called plausible deniability. Brenda wasn't just bending the rules, she was orchestrating an entire real estate empire built on stolen homes, and she was grooming Victoria to be her right-hand woman. The scale of the fraud was staggering. With help from my neighbor, the retired lawyer, we arranged an emergency home meeting for the following night. The plan: present all the evidence, expose everything, and finally confront Brenda in front of the entire community. Our attorney explained this wasn't just shady behavior, it was outright criminal. We were talking about charges like fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, harassment, and attempted theft of private property. If we could prove it all, Brenda would be facing felony-level consequences. Despite her fear, Victoria agreed to speak at the meeting. "My daughter shouldn't have to grow up knowing I helped take someone's home," she said. "If testifying is what it takes to make this right, I'll do it. Whatever happens to me is better than letting this go on." But Brenda wasn't going to roll over quietly. The very next morning, Victoria called me in a panic. Brenda had shown up at her door furious. "If you walk away from this now," she told Victoria, "you'll be facing charges for trespassing and fraud. I tried to help you, but if you betray me, I'll make sure you lose custody of Emma. I've got people at Child Services." Let that sink in. Brenda wasn't just running a scam, she was willing to rip a mother and daughter apart to protect it. That's when I realized, this wasn't just about HOA corruption. This was someone fully capable of destroying lives to stay in power. That night, the home meeting was unlike anything we'd ever seen. 43 homeowners packed the room with the largest turnout in our community's history. Someone had tipped off a local news station, and they were there with a full crew. The retired lawyer started by breaking down every policy violation and shady rule change Brenda had implemented without board approval. Our attorney laid out a legal case showing how she had systematically rewritten the rules to steal property from people who traveled for work. Then Victoria stepped up to the mic, her 16-year-old daughter Emma beside her. "I need to be honest with all of you," Victoria began. "I was recruited by Brenda Walsh to help steal Marcus Reed's cabin, and she has plans to do the same thing to others in this neighborhood." The room went silent. 3 weeks ago, I was desperate. Brenda offered me housing in exchange for some paperwork. She told me Marcus abandoned his home and the HOA needed to intervene. But over time, she showed me her real plan: fake violations, forced sales, and then buying your homes for pennies so she could turn them into short-term rentals. She explained how Brenda had files on at least 12 properties targeting people who travel regularly, especially those without strong ties to the community, and how Brenda had been changing the rules behind closed doors to make the entire scheme look legal. The reaction? Chaos. People were gasping, shouting, demanding to see the evidence. Some were angry with Victoria for her involvement, but most were stunned at how deeply Brenda had manipulated her. Especially once Emma spoke. "My mom made a bad choice," Emma said bravely, "but she did it because we were sleeping in our car." Brenda told her it was just paperwork, that the house was abandoned. "My mom thought she was helping, she just wanted us to be safe." That's when Brenda finally showed her true colors. Instead of owning up to anything, she snapped at turning the blame back on Victoria and anyone who dared challenge her. "She's lying," Brenda shouted. "I was manipulated. I was managing legitimate property enforcement." She started ranting about protecting the neighborhood from negligence, yelling that I was the real problem and that anyone siding with me was sabotaging community standards. Keep in mind, she was standing in a room full of neighbors who'd just seen physical proof of her fraud. Still, she insisted she was the victim, completely unhinged. The board vote happened right then and there. The retired attorney made a motion to remove Brenda from her position as HOA president. The result: 4 votes in favor, with only Brenda opposing. Every one of her recent rule changes was immediately voided. The broader community followed up by voting 41-2 in support of pursuing legal action. And then right on cue the detective arrived. He took formal statements about Brenda's behavior, the fraudulent documents, the threats, the property scam. Then, in front of the entire room in the news camera, he placed Brenda Walsh under arrest. Real estate fraud, abuse of authority, attempted theft, harassment. As they led her out in handcuffs, she looked over her shoulder at me, eyes full of fury. "You don't know what you've just started, Marcus." Check the HOA records from 2019. That one sentence chilled me to the bone. What happened in 2019?